All right, welcome everyone to this edition of ROV Meditation Practice Tips. And today, Stephen and I continue our series on how the 7 steps of subtle energy meditation reduce anxiety. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how transcendence reduces anxiety or ends anxiety. And so first, I think it's important to talk about what we mean by transcendence. So as we are teaching our subtle energy meditation course, and we get to this module where we're working with and talking about transcendence and sharing experiences about transcendence, there's a wide variety of relationships to this word and to what people think we mean by this and to what their own experience of that is. And a lot of times people are looking for some huge fireworks and the heavens opening and thinking, oh, well, my experience doesn't measure up to that, so I must not be experiencing anything like what you're talking about. So it can be really important to really be clear about what we mean by transcendence and all its different flavors, because all of them are valid and important, but they also share certain characteristics. So let's begin with, I've shared many times my first really profound experience of transcendence when I was on a backpacking trip at the age of 22 in 1984 in the desert. And I spent 30 days really just being in the stillness and the silence and the spaciousness of the desert, where I had previously been pretty much a city boy and really not been out in that environment much at all. And I was used to a lot of activity and also a lot of mental activity, a lot of consistent entertainment and input. And so going into this environment really was initially a shock to my system. But then as the stillness and the silence and the spaciousness of the environment kind of became part of my consciousness, my body, heart, and mind started to resonate with these qualities of the natural environment. And so what happened as a result of that? Well, first thing is my mind became absolutely quiet and became comfortable with being quiet. And my emotions were completely calm and my body completely relaxed. And I had this feeling of this vast space of awareness in which everything was connected. Everything was an expression of something, I didn't know what to call it back then, but there was this feeling of connection and wholeness, and also a feeling of an enduring quality, like whatever this awareness was, it was an eternal, never-ending awareness. And these qualities of awareness seem to be also enduring. And so that really affected my consciousness. And I came back from that trip and this state stayed with me for several days during the end of this trip. And I can remember that coming back to the city was another shock. It was like re-entry. And it led me to really want to know more about this. How can I have this experience more often, but more importantly, is this something that's possible to live from? And if I could live from this awareness, I had the sense that it would completely revolutionize how I experienced life. And because there was definitely no anxiety in that state. And so, Stephen, I want to pass it over to you to talk about just what is the process like? So I came back from this trip and I wanted to know, okay, how to reproduce this. How is it that I could not have this be just a temporary phenomenon, but something that permanently rewired my body, heart, and mind so that that was just the way that I experienced life. So can you talk a little bit about a process that we might go through to experience this transcendence?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, and love and blessings to everyone who's watching, and also thank you, Kevin, for that experience. So I think everybody who's listened to that beautiful transcendent experience of yours actually gets put right there. They feel like they're part of that inner world that you experience and that wholeness. And curiously, I've every morning I go for this forest walk, and I sometimes call it walks with Andrew because I listen to Andrew Newberg, a researcher and scientist who's talking about transcendent experiences and the spiritual brain and the mystical brain, and particularly talks about exactly as you've just described, about the wonders of the wholeness and unitary experience of the brain, but that in fact we get there from this focus ability. The brain has this power to focus, right? And you all know that if you hold a finger up in front of your face now and you look at the point of the finger, you know without a doubt you can focus on that finger, right? So we have a very simple skill that allows us to bring our attention to a particular place. So with repeated constant focus and training of our attention, we learn how to bring our attention to a particular point. And Andrew talks about that, and I know Richard Rohr does in his, you posted an article about transcendence and about this serial focus, about bringing this ability to bring this focus back again and again to a particular point. And Rupert Spira in his talks on how we can bring attention to this point of where attention collapses is because we bring attention to a particular object, normally outwardly, but when we turn the attention inwards and we look for the source of the one that's bringing the attention, then it again and again and again repeatedly, we eventually, attention collapses in on itself. And this initial process is what could be called one-pointedness. So in the ancient traditions, they talk about the same thing. Mahamudra talks about the first step or the first of the 4 yogas as being this one-pointedness, where you know how to concentrate. And that's why concentration is so intrinsically important. And going to Andrew Newberg's research, he talks about the importance of the prefrontal cortex and our ability to bring our energies there to a particular point, so that there is this ability to bring all our energies to a single point and remain there. So that's one of the crucial first steps, one-pointedness leading into concentration. Now then, and Ajahn Brahm describes the same process. So there's this consistency right throughout a lot of the traditions. If you look at the Christian traditions and prayer, the centering prayer of the Carmelites is all about taking one-pointed focus on a single word and treating that as sacred, and bringing the intention to bring God's presence with that word inside you is actually the whole process of the centering prayer. So this speaks to this focused attention. So the second part is that as that attention gets really deliberate and well trained, and you caringly, nurturingly, devotionally bring your attention or focus again and again to this point, then the second part, and this is described in the 4 yogas as the point of simplicity, there is a sense at which the focus and this subject-object focus begins to diminish, and the sense of being a subject, me or I, focusing on the object, so the finger or the candle flame or a mantra or a sound or the breath, starts to diminish. The concentration becomes really absorbed, and absorbed in such a way that it actually becomes quite simple. You notice that there is instead of the object now remaining, as Ajahn Brahm describes, that you notice a quality, you notice a sense of beauty, or you notice a quality of a feeling, right? There's a felt sense. So that it actually switches from this outer path to this inner path of simplicity, and a sense of equality and a felt sense of, oh, right, it's just so simple, right? This is the simplicity part. It's so simple to do it. It becomes very easeful. There might still be a little bit of grab there. You might be aware of the quality, but at a certain point, you become the quality because there's no longer I. The I begins to dissolve, and the sense of being the beauty. So it's like, I mean, I always use the example when you're in love. When you're in love, there's not really a distance between you and the object of your love, right? Now, being in love could be being in love with God or being in love with nature or being in love with a person, but that separation tends to vanish. So people can kind of relate to that. Most people have had this experience at some time or another. And in a sense, that's what happens at this stage of meditation, is you kind of fall in love with actually this quality. It's so deep and it's so beautiful that there simply is nothing else. So it develops into a one taste. There's no longer really this distance of subject and object. And as Rupert Spira says, the attention it actually collapses in on itself. You don't notice any longer that there's a difference between you and the object. And then at that point, when the subject and the object disappear completely, there is just this, there's no longer any meditation, which was your experience, Kevin, of just actually being the, you're not meditating on that. You weren't doing a deliberate meditation technique. You were simply being that vastness. And to tie in with what I meant or spoke about at the beginning in Andrew Newberg's research, he says at this point, the brain is a unitary whole. The limbic system and its arousal of emotions like bliss or joy or love might be present. The sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, you may experience both at the same time, a sense of both, as you described, a sense of calm, but also the sense of elevation or upliftment or bliss. And then equally, the parietal part of the brain, normally when we're so focused, especially in that beginning stages, we're activating this high energy in the prefrontal cortex. But when that referential system drops away, then the parietal system, with its spaciousness, and you described that as, you know, as this vast spaciousness within which everything else was, that then the parietal system, which with its non-referential sense is active. And so at that point, there are, you might notice a number of different things. There might be a complete decrease of activity in the brain, or it could be, so it will open to this possibility of not having any self to reference from. There's no longer any I. There is a dropping away, and then there is an experience of this wholeness and unity, which is the transcendent experience, which was what you experienced. You experienced being all of nature. There was no longer any separation between you and the natural objects. You simply were the earth, the nature, the cosmos.
Right. And I think where a lot of times people get tripped up is in this intent focusing on something, like just locked in, laser focus, but from this prefrontal cortex, from the mind. And as you said, in this next step, what really is important is that quality, feeling the quality, right? So the quality of beauty of the breath, which Ajahn Brahm talks about, or in subtle energy meditation, we initiate with this feeling of calm happiness. So it's actually feeling calm. There's a felt sense of calm coming into the body. You feel that calm and feel the happiness of that. So there's actually this felt sense of this, and in that, the two, the parasympathetic and sympathetic are balanced in that calm happiness, right? So there's a balance, there's an activation of both, but they're in this unified one taste experience where you're just really feeling this calm and feeling the happiness of that calm. When you feel really calm and really peaceful, it's just naturally brings this Buddha smile, right? It just brings this sense of happiness that is just natural. It's like, and that naturalness, I think, is another thing that can trip people up, is because what we're really doing is, like, we're stripping away the thinking mind, right? We're letting go. We're letting go of any emotions that are grabbing us, anything that engagement and activity of the body. So what we're kind of stripping those things away. And when those things are stripped away, then there's just a natural sense of peace. So in this vastness, it's just naturally, peace is a quality of awareness itself. And this sense of connection or wholeness is a quality. And in wholeness is love and compassion, because we're all one, we're all together. That oneness, love, and compassion are expressions of the field itself, right? So that's what we mean by this naturalness, is when what's interfering with feeling that naturalness is just our busy minds or our emotions locking on to something we're striving for, or our body engaged in an activity and trying to do something. So if we're trying to have this experience by intently focusing and efforting, there's maybe a tension in the body, a tension in the consciousness. There may be a wanting that is in the way, an emotion that's in the way, or there may be a judgment about, am I there? Am I not there? So there could be um, a mental interference. So it's really letting go of that evaluation of, am I there? Am I not there? Letting go of the desire, the wanting of it emotionally, letting go of that intent activity toward striving toward it. There's a letting go of all that, which is, I think, exactly why Ajahn Brahm says, this is all about letting go. It's only letting go. Even though we talk about concentration into absorption, really that happens by letting go of the mental activity and the emotional wanting and the body striving and resting in a natural state, which, yes, ends anxiety. It does.
It does. It ends anxiety of especially a number of particular things. One is as you've described many times, Kevin, everything gets stripped away. So this includes your sense of the breathing itself, your sense of the body. So you start to realize, I'm not the body. So this is a really crucial awareness or recognition. I'm not the body because I'm aware, yet I can't feel the body. So when that first part, then I'm not the mind. So I'm not the thoughts, I'm not the feelings, I'm not the perceptions. And you've described to me a number of times, and I just thought we might just discuss this a little, that there was also no fear of death for you at that point, because when you know you're not the body, there no longer can be any fear of death. You realize there is this transcendent consciousness or awareness. You actually recognize you are that boundless awareness. So I just thought that might be a really good point, that not only is the anxiety stripped away, but the body, the mind, and that fear of death actually dissolves. You recognize what there actually is no longer this duality of life and death. There is this other, this unchanging, this boundless awareness.
Right, which is probably, um, our people's biggest anxiety, right, is death, right? So when you have this recognition, this realization of this boundless awareness, and all of life as just a commingling of forces rising out of this formless awareness, creating temporary forms that arise and dissolve, but it's an eternal process, right? It's just an ongoing process, and you are that whole field. You are like a cell in that one body. That one body of awareness is eternal. And it's only when we identify with this body, these thoughts, these emotions, and think they're a thing that we are. And that conceptual consciousness that's all oriented around things and material objects and is disconnected from this recognition, this realization of this vast awareness from which and within which we arise. That's what makes us feel anxious, right? Is that identification with the body, with the mind, with being a thing. And when we realize we're not, that actually is just an event within the field, then that anxiety of just vanishes.
Agreed. Agreed. All the obstacles that we've perceived now are liberated, like literally by being that awareness. There's a total recognition that anything, yes and no, life and death, all those opposites actually no longer become that. They know that you see through the illusion of that and the way that you set it up, and that it, as you said, it's all set up around this fear or this identity of self, this idea that I'm the past and I'm the future, I'm my ideas and I'm all my concepts. Suddenly you're historyless. I love Muji's take on that word. Suddenly you're historyless. It really does feel like that. There is literally no past and no future because there is only presence. And there's only presence and recognition of this vastness, which you so beautifully described in that experience of yours, that there was this vastness of when you were connected with all of nature and that sense of wholeness. So
yeah, and it doesn't mean that then there's no more feelings or no more sensations or no more thoughts, but how we relate to them is completely different. So when the forces of life come together and create a tension in this little system here, or create a moment of anxiousness in this system, or create a moment of striving in this system, it's no longer related to as an identification, as something that I am. It's just a momentary play of forces that is arising and will pass away. And so it's a whole different orientation to life itself.
Agreed. And you also spoke about, ordinary mind and how, to other people, you can be in this state, but you're going to seem very ordinary. If you look at many of the lamas and rinpoches and mystics, as if you just met them in ordinary clothes, they'd look just like ordinary people, but their perception is vast. So it doesn't change the fact that the body will get old and die, and it doesn't change that aspect of it. It doesn't change the fact that you can still experience, as you said, feelings and thoughts and perceptions. But it's like alchemy. They are transformed as soon as they arise by your simple awareness of all it is simultaneously. So you're aware of the vastness all the time. So I can think of a vegetarian burger right this moment, but equally I can be very aware that that's the moment it arises, and then while it's there and while it dissolves. So everything that happens arises within that awareness. So there is a complete shift in how you experience the world, and also all these boundless qualities, the love, the compassion, the wisdom, the timelessness, all arise, and they're all present with you all the time, because you're never separate from that. There is an indivisibility that you suddenly recognize, and you recognize, oh, that loving, compassionate awareness has been present all that time.
And there's an ease with all that, and an acceptance. It's like everything's included, everything's embraced, right? And so there's an ease and acceptance. Krishnamurti said right before his death, he was asked for, can you summarize your wisdom in some pithy statement? And he did. He said, I don't mind what happens. I don't mind what happens. So what does that mean? I don't care? No, it just means there's a full 100% full acceptance of everything as it is, as it arises, as it dissolves. All the experiences of life are included, and none of them are things. None of them are substantial, right? They're just arising and dissolving within this vast space that we are.
Right. And life takes on such incredible magic when you actually experience it, where you don't mind what happens. You then simply are open to the flow of life through you instead of trying to direct life. And that is a complete, that allowing and welcoming and embracing is a whole different way of being.
Right. And it doesn't, and people might hear that and say, well, does that mean you don't care what happens? No, it's that you're not being identified with this caring about that. You are life itself, and life itself moves and flows and does things and thinks things and feels things and relates, and this is what life does. And so it's just a natural, easeful flow of the fullness of life in this present moment. And it's vibrant and it's alive and it's permeated with awareness and deep peace and compassion. That's just the essence, the nature of life and awareness itself.
Kevin, that's so right. I like to think of that flow that you described like a dance, that you're literally a dancer in life rather than not caring. You're a bit like Shiva, dancing in life, and very aware. The dancer is incredibly aware of all that unfolds and of the whole creative process and of creation itself and of the creator moving through her or him, so that flow and that dance of life becomes very, very tangible in every moment.
And you realize you are being danced, right? This here is being danced, is being breathed, is being loved into existence. And that's a whole different orientation to live from. Thank you, Stephen, for this beautiful discussion. And thank you all for watching. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for your engagement in raising our vibration and elevating the awareness that we live from. Bye for now.